I just want to, well, of course, I'm going to be talking about Lunacin. And Lunacin represents this, I call it a revolutionary new ingredient in nutrition today. And I subtitled this that we are all in the middle of a scientific revolution in nutrition, and we are all witnesses. I'm going to go back to the statement at the end of my talk. Now, all of you, a lot of you have actually been providing some of the evidence to the efficacy of Lunacin in the LunarichX products. I've received a lot of messages through my Facebook page and some emails about some of these effects. But I want to share to you today what the LunarichX provided the first test subject. The first test subject that received LunarichX, and that's my mother. See, one of the advantages of being a scientist and doing this work is you have access to the materials that you're working with. And last year, when we were finalizing all the experiments we're doing in animals on cholesterol reduction, and we're seeing all these wonderful results, I said to myself, well, we have a lot of leftover bottles of LunarichX. So I asked Tina, can you give me four bottles? And so she gave it to me. And the reason why I asked for it is because my mom has multiple health problems. She's 79 years old. She now has a pacemaker, so she has some heart problems. She's also diabetic, and she has high blood pressure, and she has kidney problems. And she's taking at least 9 medications every day for some of her health conditions. So I just wanted to help her see, this thing's going to help you at least with cholesterol. So in May, I started her, I told her to take one of those pills every day. And in October, she has this 6 months, or actually 3 months, she goes to her primary doctor. And the primary doctor looked at her blood work and is like, whoa, has improved so much that she stopped 5 of her medications. That was last October. She also has this deteriorating kidneys, and she had this problem for almost 3 years. And she actually goes to the nephrologist every 3 months. And then last month, I accompanied her to her nephrologist, and the nephrologist told her, she goes there every 3 months. She told her, well, everything's improved. You don't have to come every 3 months now. You can come every year. I think that's. I can just come and see her every year. So she's improved dramatically. So she's the first test subject of LunarichX, even before you guys got your first subject. So she was taking it since May. So I'm here today to tell you how does Lunacin do it, and more significantly for me as a scientist is why. Because that's the most difficult question to answer as a scientist when you have something that's unique, is why is it doing it? And I'm going to answer that question towards the end of my talk. But let me get to the how question. How does Lunacin do it? I know a lot of you have been visiting my page, and I've been posting a lot of descriptions of what Lunacin is and some of the science. And one of the distinct advantages of having Lunacin as a peptide is we can attach a tag to it, a green fluorescent tag. That's what you can see in the middle panel. There's Lunacin corresponding to the green molecules in there. And we show that Lunacin can enter human cells. This is a human cell. We published it in 2003. A graduate student actually got this result. And what we've shown, what we've observed is that Lunacin is binding, you know those blue dots there on the first panel, is chromatin nucleus? What's inside those nucleus is DNA wrapped around its packaging material. That's what we call chromatin. And so that was the first indication that Lunacin has a biological effect. It was binding to the chromatin. Oops, don't get scared, we're going to go through this. The reason why I want to include this, and a lot of people say, well, it's too technical. Well, what happens with Lunacin once it gets inside the cell, you can see it. Because the first time, the first slide is like a space view of the cell. Like if you look at the Earth from the space, that's what you see. But this is more like a bird's eye view. And I wanted to include this because I want to explain to you what gene switches is concerned. What is this epigenetic mechanism that Dr. Galvez is always talking about? And what leucine does is that it comes in and binds to the tails of the packaging material, which is the histones. And by doing that, it prevents those enzymes in there, like the PCAF enzyme, to turn on, to attach those signals there. And so what's happening is that instead of turning on those genes, it gets turned off. So it's a form of gene switch that doesn't include any DNA. And that is revolutionary right now. I mean, a lot of people are now talking about epigenetics, and this is just one of the epigenetic mechanisms. And leucine can do the other way too. It can turn on genes that are also turned off. So this property of leucine of turning on and off gene expression through this epigenetic mechanism of action is something that people are now realizing is very important to our health. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I have my PhD in genetics. I'm a geneticist. I'm one of those scientists who did a lot of work with DNA. And our professors always tell us genes and DNA. That's what determines our biology or our health. And in fact, I call it a gene-disease paradigm. That means that genes determine your health. If something happens to your genes through mutations, those mutated genes will give you a defective gene product, and that will cause for you to have that disease. And that's been the basis and foundation of biomedical research for the past 50 to 60 years. Drug development is based on this gene-disease paradigm because now they can look at drugs that can target those defective genes, turning it off so that you get the healthy phenotype. In fact, even supplement makers now use what they call antioxidant supplements. That's like the mechanism that they are proposing to prevent diseases because it reduces mutation rates. The problem with this paradigm is that when they sequence the human genome, it turns out that the human genome only is found in 2% of the whole 3 billion DNA sequence. 2%. That means it actually is only 20,887 protein coding genes. This is similar to the number of genes that is found in a microscopic roundworm. It doesn't even have a vertebrae, something microscopic. It has the same amount, same number of genes as the human genome. And what is that 98% of junk DNA that we're talking about? What is its role? See, well, it turns out in September 5, 2012, that was just last year, they finally figured out what that 98% of junk DNA is doing. It turns out that it was coordinating with these epigenetic mechanisms to turn on and off those genes. So those are acting like gene switches, right? So that's one of the reasons why the gene-disease paradigm is not going to work, or at least finding a drug that affects chronic diseases using that gene-disease paradigm is not effective. Look at cancer, look at diabetes, heart health. There are no effective treatments. Especially for cancer, they can find drugs that can prolong your life, but they can find really effective treatments that can really cure you. And part of the problem is that they don't know the cause. They were always thinking it's a genetic disease, but no. Especially at the early stages of most chronic diseases, it's epigenetic in nature. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because epigenetics can be reversed, while mutations, you cannot reverse it. And the other thing is that it can be affected by the environment. So your diet and lifestyle can determine how good your epigenome is. So the fact that you can reverse it, and then you can affect it by diet, you have more control of your health than what you know, what is available in terms of drugs. So that's the importance of the epigenome. So now I wanted to tell you, don't be scared about this, okay? When I first showed this in Chicago, I was like, oh, don't tell us about those things. And the only reason why I wanted, because I wanted to tell you what lunasin is the first dietary ingredient that affects the epigenome and cause difference in changes in gene expression. And the reason why I included this is because this is like a summary slide of all the papers. There's like 50, at least more than 50, almost 60 papers now, talking about these health effects of lunasin. So I just compiled some of those results, including some of the research we've done at UC Davis, and show you some of the genes that are turned on by lunasin, or turned off by lunasin, and they inhibit genes that cause diseases. And there's several of them. Inflammation, the NF-kappa B, the RAS, which is causing cancer, angiogenesis is also there. But anyway, it has multiple effects. It inhibits multiple genes that cause diseases. And on top of that, it also increases expression of genes associated with cellular health. And these are all the genes that are turned on. This is based on accumulation of data over the years, over the past 12 years. And compared it to what happens with a drug. When drug companies develop a drug, they target a specific pathway. They actually target a specific gene. And I just wanted to show you one of those genes that have been targeted. And this is the estrogen receptor. It's a tamoxifen. It's a drug that prevents breast cancer. Look at it. There's only one pathway it's affected. In fact, I went to a couple of meetings 3 months ago. I went to a meeting at UC Davis, and I was there 2 years ago, and they were so excited about this new drug for prostate cancer, and they said, oh, this is going to be revolutionary, we're going to find a cure for prostate cancer. And then 2 years later, I went to the same meeting, and I said, well, the human clinical trials failed. And so the whole meeting was trying to answer, why did it fail? It turns out that, yeah, you're eating one of those genes, you put a roadblock, you prolong the life for like 3 months, but then the cancer sometimes finds a way around it. And it's because there's so many pathways that can go wrong. In fact, there's like 40 genes just for cancer alone. And if you multiply it by the combinations, it's like another 75 beyond that. So are you going to find drugs for each one of those? So if you are a consumer, would you choose something where you're only affecting one pathway, or something in nutrition, a nutrition ingredient that can have can affect multiple genes in multiple pathways?